Good morning. This is an open video for any politician, community activist, anybody that might be able to answer these questions, and I'm anxious to see your answers in the comments. If I'm driving down the road and I get pulled over and the police officer asks me for my driver's license, is that racist? If I go to buy a pack of cigarettes and they ask for my ID, is that racist? If I go to buy a 12-pack of beer and they ask me for ID, is that racist? If I go to enter a government building and they ask me for ID, is that racist? If I go to fly on an airplane and they ask me for my ID, is that racist? I think you know where I'm going with this. People are up in arms and upset that Georgia will require identification to vote, but they're not upset about being required to have ID or a license to drive, to enter government buildings, to fly on an airplane, to buy cigarettes, to buy alcohol, to buy lottery tickets. Why is it that those things aren't racist to ask ID for, but it's racist to ask for ID to vote? Well, you might say, well, we want to make sure people are eligible to drive because that's a very dangerous thing to let somebody just drive, and they could possibly kill somebody if they don't know what they're doing. Same thing can be happening with votes. Allowing somebody who is not eligible to vote could be more dangerous than somebody who doesn't have a license to drive. So, what makes the distinction that requiring ID to vote is a racial issue? Do you want convicted felons voting? Do you want dead people voting? Do you want one person to vote numerous times? Because requiring ID to vote will stop all three of those things. It does not mean that you are too stupid to get an ID. It doesn't mean that you're unable to get an ID. It doesn't mean that you can't afford to get an ID. Requiring ID to vote ensures that whoever is voting has voted only one time, is eligible to vote, and is living. I don't see the issue with that. Okay, you might say, well, some people maybe not be able to afford to get an ID. That still has nothing to do with race, unless you're saying that the minorities are too poor to even afford an ID, and that in itself is racist. Here's my suggestion. Anybody of the age of 18 or older that is living and is not a convicted felon gets sent a form to get a voter ID. If they get it and later become a convicted felon, then that voter ID is struck in the system as ineligible. If that person becomes deceased, that voter ID becomes struck as ineligible. Provide these cards free of charge. Problem solved. But they won't ever do anything like that, because I guarantee you, the ones that are complaining about requiring ID to vote are the ones that want dead people voting. They want convicted felons voting. They want people voting more than once. So, you want to do something to protect our democracy and protect our voting system? Be all about requiring ID to vote. It protects democracy. Allowing ineligible voters to vote erodes it. Have a great day.